you might think this is an absolute bonkers conversation to be having, where we are referring to Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. finding some type of catch weight where they can have a dance and maybe make the silhouettes of what their dads once upon a time did in the 1990s. We are told that we're there. Both sides have, in principle, agreed the prospect of fighting each other. Conor's in and Chris is in. Of course, there are legalities, and of course, there are certain things that do have to be dotted and crossed before we can announce dates and locations and get this fight on. But from what we're hearing from our sources throughout the course of the week, and despite promoters trying to put you off the scent of various things, this fight is quite a long way down the line of happening, and will hopefully happen in the autumn of this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say that this fight is going ahead. I mean, I'm not announcing it, obviously, because it's not my prerogative to do that. But my understanding is this fight is sealed. They both want it. Both teams want it. The Sauerland brothers have taken Chris Eubank Jr. To DAZN, to Eddie Hearn. They have a great relationship, as we know, for many years. Conor Benn wants the fight. My understanding is, obviously, for those not familiar with the weights of the two men, Conor Benn fights at welterweight, 147 pounds. He's very highly ranked in the world rankings. He's probably about 6th, 7th in the world, but there's a shark-infested water in front of him in terms of who's out there. Obviously, the likes of people like Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, Virgil Ortiz, Yaron Ennis. These are amazing names, not to mention several others. And to step sideways for, as they're calling it, for the legacy people are talking about, as Conor Benn tweeted this week, is an amazing thing. And my understanding is that with Conor Benn fighting at 147 pounds welterweight and Chris Eubank Jr. having campaigned largely at 160 pounds middleweight, as we call it, but also at 168 at super middleweight. He's had 2 losses to Billy Joe Saunders and George Groves, very high profile fights, but other than that, he's looked amazing and he's a great character. I understand he's going to come down to 155 pounds. That's what I'm hearing. Okay. It's going to be made at about 155 pounds. So he's going to have to lose a little bit of weight to have that fight. For me, Eubank is the favourite in that fight, but he's got to lose that weight and come down. He's a very disciplined character, as we know. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. He loves being with Roy Jones Jr., one of the great American modern heroes in boxing, one of the legends of the sport, who's brilliant, who's formed a brilliant partnership with him. And these two will create 30 years on, 1990, 1993, the win by Chris Eubank Sr. in the first fight, one of the biggest grudges in British boxing. 3 years later, once at middleweight, once at super middleweight, they hated each other. They've been on tour with Gold Star, Spencer's outfit, who takes Tyson Fury on tour in recent times. They didn't get on, first of all, but then the dads did get on. Can you imagine? We heard the voices there. We heard the great Jim Rosenthal there as part of the broadcast team. Those guys are going to bring so much to it. There's going to be so much nostalgia. It's a no-brainer, because even if Conor Benn loses, he goes back to the welterweight division then and begins his campaign again. But it's a no-brainer in terms of nostalgia going back 3 decades, bringing it up to the future. Let's make these fights now. And this, for me, is where DAZN are doing a great job. They should have gone out there, as we spoke earlier, and nailed down that fight of Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk, no matter what it cost them to get the broadcast rights for the UK. We both believe that. But getting this one is a coup.
It's absolutely gigantic. It really is. It's interesting that Conor Benn has decided to take this step at this particular stage, because, as you said, he's doing very well in the 147 pounds division.
It's a huge money fight.
I get that. And listen, they are prize fighters at the end of the day, yep. And there is no bigger money fight than fighting each other. I get that completely because of the nostalgia, and nostalgia always sells. From a Eubank Jr.'s point of view, and I keep calling him Eubank Jr., obviously, because his dad used to fight, but he's not a spring chicken anymore. He's in his early 30s. He's Christopher. And he's done all okay to this particular point. Like you said, he's got 2 defeats on that record, but he's managed to get himself in a decent position within that middleweight division, to be highly ranked, to be well positioned, to be fighting for titles himself, to be taking this fight.
Big fight.
I get it.
He said over and over again, he wants Golovkin, he wants Canelo, he wants Billy Joe Saunders, and Billy Joe may well come back and fight him at the end of the year. It would not surprise me, Ed, to see, sorry to bust in on you, to see Eubank fight Conor Benn and then Billy Joe Saunders next. He said right now all he wants are the big fights. And this is a big fight. It's a big fight, not because of belts, but it's a big fight in terms of legacy and in terms of earning capacity and in terms of eyes on the sport. And also, it suits him. The young man, 25-year-old Conor Benn, is coming up 2 weight divisions, really. I'm sure there'll be a rehydration clause after they've weighed in on the Friday. Because
he doesn't really rehydrate that much, does he?
No, he
Eubank
doesn't.
Jr.?
He doesn't. But he is going to have to boil down a little bit to make the weight. I'm so thrilled by it. I can't wait for the dads to be there at the build-up in the press conference and the sit-downs.
Does it do a stadium?
If they build it right, yeah, and if the weather's good enough in September, why couldn't it be at the Olympic Stadium, West Ham? It's a big, big stadium. What's that, 70,000, 80,000 seater, is it?
Seater-wise, I think it's about 60. But if you've got the pitch
60,000, I'm being told. Finally, we get a word from our producer tonight. But at 60,000, I think that's brilliant. I think it could do it. But you need to...
Cardiff?
No, let's do it in London. Do it in London. Get the 2 dads there.
Old Trafford,
revisit all the things. Do the gloves are off with the dads.
They fought at Old Trafford.
They did. But get the gloves are off at get the gloves are off with the dads. Yeah. Get the gloves are off.
Sign the contract on the TV live.
Do it all. Just do it. Build and start now. Let's build it all summer. Build it all summer. Build it, and they will come, as they say.
How long are we thinking before there is some formal type of conversation about
this? Well, I want it on Monday.
But
I mean, it will come down. There's lots of things to iron out. Eddie Hearn was very evasive, wasn't he, this week when asked about that, and he said that they're looking at Keith Thurman. What does that do for Conor Benn? Yes, it gives him a little bit more global standing, but it doesn't really push him up there into that.
It announces him in America.
Does it, though?
At welterweight?
Maybe it does. But are America watching Conor Benn and Keith Thurman on DAZN? Look, yes, it does incrementally, but... what will really announce him in America is this is a kid that can draw 60,000 people to a football stadium that was the Olympic Stadium in the heart of East London with the 2 dads who were legendary figures. Obviously, they couldn't get the likes of Roy Jones Jr. over here at the time to face them, which was weird. We asked Frank Warren about that, this long lunch we had on Tuesday. I almost feel like I'm still at it. That Frank said they could never get Roy Jones Jr. to come over and face those guys, but look how big that was here. This is the right move. Listen, I may be wrong. People can say what they want about my opinions about this. This is a fight that will get people watching, eyeballs on it, will make a lot of money for the 2 men, and could make a name for both of them. And if it's a brilliant fight, they'll do it again.